This video is going to be my first preview for the Ravens-Browns Week 10 matchup in Baltimore, a rematch of a game won by the Ravens 28-3 in Week 4 in Cleveland. Of course, the Browns played without Deshaun Watson. He'll be back this week. This focus is going to be on the Ravens offense versus the Browns defense. The Browns come in 5-3, tied with the Bengals and Steelers, one game behind the Ravens in the loss column in the AFC North, which is a ridiculous record. If you look at the records in the other divisions across the NFL, this one's pretty amazing if you ask me. The real question for me is, can the Ravens generate 3 organic scoring drives, 4 perhaps, against this Browns defense? And what I mean by that is not getting a short field like we did 1.5 or 2 times in the win in Week 4. The first touchdown was a 11-yard touchdown run by Lamar, one play. And then the final touchdown, the bunch right mesh touchdown to Mark Andrews that I'll show you a little bit later in this film study, that one came on a pretty short field. I thought we got the ball on their 43 or maybe their 38, somewhere around in there. How many organic scoring drives are the Ravens going to be able to generate against a Browns defense that oftentimes has 4, 5, 6 stops in a row during a game? I do think there's 2 anomalous games on either side of the spectrum for this Browns defense, and I'll kind of reference them here. I'm going to talk a little bit about their defense coordinator, Jim Schwartz. He's originally a Baltimore guy. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. Plays a lot of, in the film that I have at least, plays a lot of man-free and cover 3 and to great effect. And at times, it has burned them in certain situations. And I intend to show you extended film of those 2 coverages generally. They play some split field coverage stuff, they play a little bit of everything. I'm going to show you generally the man-free that I think we're going to see a lot of when we go 11 personnel and 20 personnel. And then also show you the cover 3 that they played a lot of in Week 4 against the Ravens. Clearly, their defense relies on Myles Garrett. Comes in with 9.5 sacks in 8 games. Halfway to what, it'd be a career high for him if he keeps this pace up over the next 9 remaining games. I think he's had 16 sacks each of the last 2 years, 13.5 sacks, and then 10 sacks his first 2 seasons. So 19 or 20 if you add on the additional game and you assume he'll get 1 per game. I mean, that'd be an amazing season. They do have 8 other guys with at least 1 sack. I think that's pretty amazing. But getting back to Schwartz, like I said, he's a Baltimore guy. Of course, he won the Super Bowl as a defense coordinator with the Eagles under Doug Peterson. I think he went to Mount St. Joe High School, private school in Maryland. They've twice held NFL teams below 100 total yards in 2023. That's ridiculous. A lot of defenses don't do that once in a decade, and they've done it twice in one season. Now, they're somewhat anomalous, admittedly. Week 3, the 27-3 win over the Titans offense. The Titans offense was really struggling at that time under Ryan Tannehill. And last week against the Cardinals are transitioning from, to Kyler Murray being the starting quarterback again, with Josh Dobbs being traded away to the Vikings. So there's that 1-week transition period where a third stringer, admittedly, and they only had 58 total yards and generated 7 first downs against the Browns. So their defensive stats, I think, have to be taken with that into consideration, especially if you look at the last 3 weeks, one of which is a shutout against Arizona. But in the other 2 games, they've allowed 60 points total. They do come in to the game 3rd in the NFL in scoring defense, giving up just 17.4 points per game. So that's an amazing number in any season, but particularly in the modern era of football, even though scoring is down this year. I intend to talk to you at length about some of the big plays they've given up. And I think there's a common theme or common elements across many of them. And I'll reveal that a little bit later when we get into the film study. We're going to basically focus the film on the Ravens game in Week 4 and the Colts and Seahawks in, I think, Week 7 and 8. I will not show film of their Week 9 game against the Cardinals. I feel like it's anomalous. But we'll talk about the main points I want to make talking about their defense is their base 4-3 generally. Well, against 11 personnel, you're going to see their nickel be focused on man-free coverage. Also, I want to talk about the big plays they've given up. The Browns beat the Colts 39-38 on the road in Week 7. It was a great game. They forced 4 turnovers defensively. Garrett blocked a punt. I think he also recorded a safety on a sack in the end zone. However, they gave up 456 total yards. and a number of big plays. The next week against the Seahawks on the road, the Seahawks, of course, won that game 24-20. Seahawks turned the ball over 2 or maybe 3 times, but I think it was 2. They won the game 28-24, also produced 362 total yards. If you just look at the total yardage output, you've got those two games that stick out way on the poor end of the spectrum for the Browns defense from their perspective in terms of allowing so many yards. And then you've got the Titans and Cardinals games on the other end of the spectrum where they allow less than 100 yards. So what are they? Are they something in between? Well, of course, right? Are the Ravens going to be able to push closer to that 360 total yards, 456 total yards? I'm not sure. I know it's a home game, and we've played extremely well in our last 2 home games, generating 500 yards of offense in wins over the Seahawks and the Lions. I'm not sure that you can approach that against this defense, but you can get big plays on them. And as proof of that, the Ravens had 10 plays of 11 yards or more in the Week 4 win. So you've got a 43-yard completion to Flowers against cover 3. I'll show you that. A 36-yard pass play to Andrews where Lamar found him against man-to-man coverage. He beat one of their corners man-to-man. A 23-yard completion to Melvin Gordon. A 22-yard run by Melvin Gordon. All along with that, you also have a 55-yard screen play to Justice Hill that came back for a hold that I don't think is one of the most egregious holds that we've ever seen. Point is, 10 plays that counted of 11 yards or more generated 210 yards of offense, not including that 55-yard screen to Justice Hill. There is a blueprint here for the Ravens to try to recreate, to generate big plays, and they have the personnel to do it in the run or the pass game. We're going to start the film by looking at Myles Garrett and how impactful he's been in some of their wins, particularly recently. All right, so let's get the film started talking about Myles Garrett. He's got 9.5 sacks this year, playing about 80% of the team's snaps defensively, 4 forced fumbles, 8 tackles for loss. Incredible season. He had a sack late in the second quarter against us in week 4, on the spin move to the inside. The matchup of him against Ronnie Stanley looms large for real. Garrett generally plays from the right side against the offense's left tackle, but to my knowledge, just in the film that I have, he's been moved around more, meaning he's playing on the left side more in 2023 than I seem to recall him playing in previous seasons, at least from the film that I've watched, which has generally been 2 times a year. He makes impact plays anywhere, against the pass, against the run, but where I feel like he's absolutely unblockable is when he's stunting inside. He becomes a force that, look, we can't be predictable against this team anyway because they play such great defense, but we really can't be predictable against Myles Garrett, and we certainly can't match him up at any point in time against a tight end and expect it to go well for our offense. When I say we can't be predictable, let me be specific. If you are predictable, then you open yourself up to a player like Myles Garrett or anyone. Defensive players in the NFL are incredibly smart, by the way, at recognizing something and then stunting inside or blitzing into a gap that maybe they're not supposed to be in. We cannot become predictable at any point in time against this defense. His highlights from this year obviously include this crossover stuff that he did in week 1 against the Bengals. Wins against everyone, left tackle, right tackle, interior offensive lineman. If your offensive line has trouble with a particular stunt or blitz, Schwartz has the ability to put Myles Garrett in that place and take advantage of that by utilizing Garrett's unique blend of size, speed, explosiveness, strength, and technique. He had a ridiculous game against the Colts in Week 7. It's going to be really tough to justify letting Ronnie Stanley be one-on-one with Garrett very often in this game. Even this is a 1st and 10 and it's a forced fumble. He can wreck your possession, wreck your half, your quarter, your game, whatever. He can wreck your game plan in one snap with a forced fumble, a tipped pass that someone else intercepts. He's going to force a safety later on. Oh, by the way, here he is blocking a kick, blocking a long field goal attempt, nearly went back for a touchdown by Denzel Ward just in terms of the recovery. But watch what he does, and then this little nuance that 93, I think it is, does. Garrett's jumping over, obviously, but he's not doing it from further than 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage, so therefore it's not a penalty. But as he's doing it, additionally, it looks like to me 93 is pulling down on the long snapper to allow, perhaps give Garrett a better chance of leaping over the top and then be able to replant as opposed to potentially running into a player who sees him leaping. But it's an unbelievably athletic play. NFL is full of freak athletes with unbelievable size, but not many guys can do what he just did in terms of jumping over it without having to be further away from the line of scrimmage and then replant and be able to elevate and block the kick. Beats this right. This is some evidence of him playing on the right side. Beats this right tackle really badly. They talk about pass sets and over sets. With help, there's almost no set here. But in the end zone to force a fumble, strip Gardner Minshew, who made some plays in this game, and you'll see some of them in this film study. And then the Browns were able to recover it and turn it into a safety. He had 2 sacks. Actually had 2 forced fumbles in this game. 9 total tackles. The blocked kick that you saw, just for good measure, down here from the bottom side of the screen, he gets a pass deflection. That's the type of play there that we cannot afford to allow him to make. The Colts are setting up a potential screen down here to the bottom side. Looks like it's good in terms of numbers. 1 guy to catch at Zach Moss, 3 potential blockers against only 3 tacklers with inside-out pursuit. But we cannot accomplish these tasks by leaving Myles Garrett unblocked. To read him in the option games, sometimes I understand, but I still don't want him to be able to get a free run at Lamar. I want to make him work for it, to be honest with you. You have to account for Myles Garrett in the protection scheme, in the blocking scheme, where he can just destroy the game plan. It really goes unsaid. It's not like the Browns don't have other good players for real defensively. They've got multiple guys that can contribute at all 3 levels of the defense. It's just that Garrett is so great at disrupting things and having an incredible impact on any given play. So now let's look at some circumstances or elements by which I think NFL offenses are consistently trying to attack this Browns defense. I'm going to give you 2 of them, and then we'll talk about a third as the plays go on. This is a lengthy section here, to be honest with you. It's very interesting to me. NFL teams are often using 11 personnel. We know that. Against the Browns, it's 11 personnel, and then almost a double motion or 1 motion, and then bringing that same player who motioned back across the formation post-snap against their man-free defense has generated big plays in the run game with running backs, in the passing game down the field, and then in the run game with the quarterback keeping the ball. This is going to be a 3rd and 2, 11 personnel against their man-free. I'll explain it to you when I let it run by a second time. It's going to be a keep by Gardner Minshew, and it's a 17-yard touchdown run. He's a good athlete. He's in the NFL, but certainly nothing like what we have in Lamar Jackson. But you as a fan watching the game, whether you're a Ravens fan, Browns fan, or whatever, if we're in 11 personnel offensively and 22 is to the tight end side, you can reliably say it's man-free, probably 80% of the time or more. Additionally, the NFL teams are often going to use motion to sift out the coverage. So what you will get on that motion out of 11 personnel is either someone like Newsome running across with his man, which I think is McKenzie, or you'll get a rotation, which is what you got here. 0 rolling back to free safety, and then the free safety rolling down to take McKenzie. But what a lot of teams are doing after that motion is bringing that player back across the formation, either post-snap or like you saw just before the snap, to then force those safeties to rotate back. For whatever reason, it's causing problems for the Browns, and not just the Browns, multiple teams. And look, they've played really good defense for most of the season. I am finding big plays generated by offenses that consistently have these elements: 11 personnel against their man-free, motion that's possibly a return or double motion that ends up being a big play. It's not every iteration of it. It's not 70% of the iterations. It's not even 50%, but it's a lot, and I intend to show them to you here. This is Jonathan Taylor for the Colts, a 21-yard run up the middle of the defense. So, mind you, they've given up the least amount of yards in the league this season. But when they have given up big plays, It's the elements that I mentioned to you. 11 personnel, there's the tight end, there's number 22. You have a middle of the field free safety. Presumably one of these two inside linebackers is going to be manned up on the running back. Everyone else that you see in the picture who doesn't have their hand in the ground in three-point stance is playing man-to-man. If you can get, and this front, out of their 11 personnel, man-free defense, if you can get their inside linebackers blocked up, you have the opportunity to generate big plays in the run game. That is a fact. And if you're a Browns fan listening and you don't like hearing that, my apologies. But after looking through probably the biggest 20 to 25 plays that they've given up this year in terms of yardage, 80 to 85% of them have those characteristics. 11 personnel, man-free alignment by the Browns, and some type of double motion or return motion post-snap. These seem to be the elements that often lead to big plays. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. This is 11 personnel against the Seahawks, Week 7. Kenneth Walker, a huge run. It's a pro slot formation. So twin slot, excuse me. Here's the twins. Here's the slot. Notice the tight end, Noah Fant, who's over there, 22. It doesn't mean that every time 22 goes to the tight end side, it's man-free, but most of the time it is, particularly against 11 personnel. This is going to be a motion and then a boot by JSN and Geno Smith. And I think what they're doing is, and there's going to be a similar play that you'll see here in a moment by the Ravens, this motion and then the boot by Geno Smith off of it, what it ends up doing is holding multiple defenders on the backside. So you can see that Delpit has gone with the tight end. 0 has motioned across. 54 is being held by the boot. So let's just look at the numbers to the top side. How many helmets you got to defend this run play for the Browns? I count 5, and you have 5 offensive linemen plus the running back Walker, so you've got a 6-on-5. They've got a hat for a hat. They've created a numbers advantage, and again, they're able to get up to the inside linebackers. These guys are quick at inside linebacker. They're athletic. They tackle well. I love how they play downhill. Having said that, when big, huge 330, 340-pound offensive linemen get in their face, they're able to move them, and the gaps become wider. Well, that's common sense. That's what happens with most second-level defenders. But my point is, with these guys, the gaps seem to be wider than for other NFL defenses. I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's a size thing. I don't know if that's them picking a side. Some of you will know what I mean by when I say that, and some of you won't. Sometimes you pick a side and try to wrong-arm things. I don't see them wrong-arming things. And what I mean by that is on direct run flow at them, I don't see them going underneath of the block on the front side, which would potentially allow the backside guy to fold over the top. And I expected to see that because both of these guys are pretty fast. They generally play everything on the front side. The front side linebacker gets to the outside shoulder of whatever blocker he encounters. In this case, the backside linebacker gets to the front side shoulder of the blocker he encounters, and it's a huge cutback lane. It's a very simplistic explanation and way of me saying I expected to see more fast flow from the backside inside linebacker, and I just haven't seen it. If you want me to explain that a little bit more, feel free to let me know. 11 personnel by the Ravens, tight end up to the top side. I think it's likely. 22 up there. It happens to be to the field. Motion by the Ravens, Zay Flowers, pulls some defenders, and the run inside. These are the elements that I see teams using consistently against their man-free look with a one-high safety structure to generate big plays in the run game with running backs, the boot or keep game with quarterbacks, and potentially in the pass game as well. This is a concept that the Ravens haven't used a ton of lately. They actually had a fumble in this Week 4 game against the Browns on the same concept. Lamar wasn't able to get out to the running back enough and tried to flip the ball to him in some manner or maybe release it in midair. But in any case, I wouldn't be surprised to see that exact concept, the jet with the dive, used early in the Browns game to see if they can recreate some of those backside running lanes. This is another 11 personnel formation bunch. Tight end up to the top side. There's 22. Generally going to be man-free. They've got a different inside linebacker here down to the bottom side. Lockett motions. And you can see they're a little unsure of who should go with him. It's pretty much the same concept as the other Seahawks running play that I showed you in terms of the motion going to one side. And except for this case, the motion goes to the offense's left, and the run initially goes to the left as well. So the run flow is with the motion, not against it, like the first run play that I showed you for the Seahawks. Charbonnet cuts off the block, or inside, really, I should say, inside the block of the tight end. You can see that originally Ward and this other guy were going in motion or with the guy in motion. But the tight end I'm talking about is going to go scoop inside of Delpit and cut him off. And look at the linebackers, both of them. It's not that this is the wrong technique. They're both front side on the blockers they encounter. That's typical. That's the way I taught linebackers how to play. However, when you have smaller, quicker, faster linebackers, which I think is what the Browns have, oftentimes you'll look to wrong arm the first block. And this is a simplistic explanation because this ball cuts back. It doesn't go in the direction where I just drew that arrow for Charbonnet. But what it would allow is the backside inside linebacker to fast flow. I think that would play to the strengths of their linebackers. I haven't seen them doing that much at all. Everything is outside half of the blocker that they're being engaged by. And in some cases, and this is a very poor explanation, is not meant to be insulting, I feel like they run around blocks a little bit. I don't feel like they take on blocks and set them inside and condense running lanes and make them smaller. Do they stop the run sometimes? Of course. Are they a very good defense? Absolutely. When they've given up big plays in the run game, I feel like one of the main factors has been these guys not taking on blocks in a way that sets it inside, because on some level they can't. Their lack of size and lack of overall strength, I feel like, can be a detriment in some of those situations. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense and isn't too insulting for anybody who's a Browns fan. Another 11 personnel run play, no motion here. It's a same side run. And I'm going to show you a little bit of Ravens film here in a minute of the Ravens actually doing the same thing. And by the way, the Colts stole at least 2 of the Ravens plays when they got to meet this Browns team. So there's no motion. It's a same side run. But look, here's the tight end. There's 22. You got a one high safety structure, clearly setting up to play man there. And one of these 2 remaining guys on the inside would be responsible for the running back if it was a pass. It's a base block by the tight end, meaning he's trying to turn that D end out. He's trying to get him turned this way and not let him condense that hole. And in this case, 22 ends up filling to the outside like he's on quarterback. No one is inside the C gap, inside of where the tight end blocked. Very similar to 2 run plays that the Cardinals hit the Ravens with when Kyle Hamilton was to the tight end side 2 weeks ago. The right tackle also caves in a D tackle up to the top side. And the inside linebacker to that side is going to get caught up in the trash because he's lined up super tight right now. His toes are at 3 yards, so he can't get over the top of this trash right here, meaning a defensive tackle or someone being dumped into your lap. He can't climb over the top of it because his feet were here originally. He hasn't allowed himself enough room to move, enough depth, I should say, to move laterally and get over the top of that block. And as a result, when you combine that with Delpit filling outside, you get another big run game out of a run play out of 11 personnel. This is not to say that this is easy to do at all. This is just the parameters by which it's happening consistently, if you ask me. Same exact formation by the Ravens, except you've got a fullback, Ricard, on the field, nickel response by the Browns. 22 is lined up to his side, so they're treating him like a tight end, which is what he's lined up as in this formation. Running back on the same side, very similar run play as to what you just saw by Seattle. The difference is that D end slams down inside. Here, he slams down inside, so Ricard just blocks him this way. He just takes him as far this way as he can, not that far, obviously. Whereas on the previous play, the D end stayed outside, and the tight end for the Seahawks based him out to try to get him moving in this direction, expand that gap, which is where Charbonnet went. Ricard takes that D end down, and you can see what's happened. Isolation with Delpit and Gus Edwards, who is almost always going to make the first guy miss. 16-yard gain, bunch right A. Again, this is not easy to do. And I don't mean to be simplistic in what I'm showing you, but I think this was a big element, something that has hit the Browns a lot in 2023, but particularly recently against the Colts and the Seahawks, and even this game against the Ravens, like the play I just showed you. Now look, man free's been very good to them, however. All right? They've overwhelmed people with it at times, like the Bengals in week 1. This is a 5-1 look that they utilized in week 1. Joe Burrow's, clearly struggling to get rid of a wet football there, but it's a 5-1 look. Really, it does limit what you can do coverage-wise. You got a defensive end, 3 interior defensive linemen, 1 inside linebacker. It's your nickel structure, 4 DBs. There's your 5th DB there. So that's why I call it a 5-1. Some people call it a 3-3, but it's a 5-1 by alignment, so that's why I choose to call it that. It's been effective, don't get me wrong, but you can't get to a Tampa 2 out of it. I shouldn't say you can't. It's a little bit tougher to do, but the man free has been productive for them. The very next play, they're in this 5-1 look again. By the way, they showed the 5-1 look early against the Colts, and I think some against the Seahawks as well. 3rd and 7 here, week 1. It allows the DBs to play the first route. Why? Because it's a dedicated 5-man rush. You're putting 2 actual pass rush guys on the edge and hopefully putting someone good on the inside. I think they put Zadarius Smith inside. For some of these situations, you can see that they've got Garrett and Smith on the same side, 54 on the other side. He's a badass too. So it's forcing the offense to account for 5 rushers and giving the DBs the ability to play the first cut, play the first route. It's a 3rd and 7. Boyd makes 1 cut and gets tackled by not 1 but 2 guys. Why can they do that? Why can they play fast? Because they know the quarterback's not going to have time. And I think that's the whole point of what Scwartz does in this man-free look sometimes, whether it's 4-2 nickel or in this case a 5-1 nickel. The idea is to get some pressure, limit the route options, and you can see Burrow had to really load that football up to throw it because it was so wet that day. Another 3rd down. Look empty. Sorry if you hear me flipping through some papers. I kind of got to make some notes as I prepare these because they're going to be so lengthy. Empty's been one of Joe Burrow's go-to platforms as far as a formation in the NFL and at LSU. When the Browns are lining up like this to play man-free, they're playing man-free. There have been some iterations of them lining up like man-free and then rolling to something else, but generally, when they line up in it, this is what they're playing because they think that they're going to be able to get to the quarterback and they think they can cover you. It's usually a 4 or a 5-man blitz. In this case, I think it's 6 down here at the bottom side. JOK would be responsible for the running back. The running back blocks. So he's going to +1 as far as the rush. He'll become the 5th rusher. It's always interesting to me when people say they rush 5 this percent of the time. They rush 4 this percent of the time. Sometimes it's a read like that one there, and it's designed as a 4-man rush. But because the edge defender gets chipped by the running back, so essentially could be collapsed inside, the man responsible for him replaces the blitzer off the edge, and it looks like a designed 5-man rush when really it's a 4-man rush with a read by JOK. Great challenge down the field in terms of making contact. They are a good man-free team. What do I expect to see the Ravens do? Run some more screens to the slot. Now, this is Lamar checking to it, so maybe we'll have it called more often when we see that personnel on the field. The jailbreak slot screen, whatever, with Stanley and Linderbaum getting out there in front, not Simpson, who I didn't think looked good getting out in screens earlier or last week, excuse me. Now, keep in mind that there'll probably be a safety back here in this man-free look. You won't necessarily have this sticks blitz 0 look, which is what the Titans are showing. So there'll be 1 less inside-out player, but 1 more third-level player at the safety level to make a tackle if and when your receiver breaks through like this. So there'll still be someone there to make a shoestring tackle potentially, but it will come from a middle-of-the-field free safety, at least from what the film I have of the Browns, that's where he'll be lined up if it's man-free. This one should look familiar to Ravens fans particularly. It's bunch right A, pin, pull, pitch, and look at the motion that they're giving the Browns. I mean, the guy defending him, number 0, is like tired of running. And this one almost busts Jonathan Taylor 24 yards. But we run this play. We run this exact play. Keaton Mitchell had a 60-yard run last week out of this play, but not the same formation. This is bunch, and look what they're doing with McKenzie. I mean, they're totally confusing the DBs on who to take him. And then finally, look how far behind he is. This safety's almost thinking about spinning down, but there's not enough time left because the Colts snapped the football. So you've got a trailing defender way behind, but it's the pin, pull, pitch. So you're pinning down on the edge defender. In this case, they're pulling Pittman and the right tackle out in front. Pitch to Taylor. He gets the edge. 24-yard gain after running through an arm tackle. Again, man free versus 11 personnel. Motion, return motion, almost triple motion by McKenzie. Post-snap movement by a DB trying to catch up. Unable to get involved in a run play at inside linebacker level. Those are all the components I see of the big plays that have been generated against this defense. Shouldn't need to remind you, but here's two examples of it from the Ravens' perspective. Pin pull pitch. And Morgan Moses has been exceptional this year at decking people once he gets out in space. Very similar to conceptually to what you saw, except you've got a wider alignment by Sam Hubbard. So Mark Andrews is handling him. One puller to the outside. A second puller, Moses scrapes tight off of Andrews' backside. And decks Mike Hilton. Another iteration of it, unbalanced bunch right A. So we're letting Stanley, the unbalanced tackle, be the pin guy. Likely gets out on Jack Campbell. And then Moses pulls and ends up in the end zone with Gus Edwards as well. It's a devastating play to get out. You shouldn't need to see too many examples of that as a Ravens fan. I'm sure you guys have seen enough of it during the game or on my content. Like I said, Keaton Mitchell's 60-yard run last week against the Seahawks was the same concept. Most run plays against this defense are going to be just full of contact and challenged. We must block their inside linebackers. If we don't, we won't get anything done consistently in the run game. If we let their inside linebackers run free, I don't care if it's 5, 42, 44, 6. They're all quick. Maybe 44 isn't as explosively fast twitches are the guys. But if you can't get them blocked and they get inside of you downhill, they're going to disrupt things and get involved in the play, even though this appears to be a pretty good run. The Colts didn't just steal our pin pull pitch play. They stole a play called one back power that we ran against the Browns a lot in week 4. And I'll show you, I think, one iteration of it here in a moment. This is that 5-1 look. I think you got Zadarius Smith down here. I'm not sure who that is up there, but you got 3 interior linemen, 1 inside backer, nickel structure, 5 DBs, and it's one back power to the tight end side. The offense is right, defense is left, so you're creating a wall with a down block scheme, left guard kicking and pulling. You can see 99 hits the deck and tries to low crawl him. Still ends up being a 5 or 6 yard gain. Same exact play that we ran against this team in week 4. Motion to the side, kick out block by Simpson right here. I think earlier when we ran this, he actually got decked. On this one, he stays on his feet. Gus for like 6 yards. Out of 11 personnel, I think we can create the situations by which we potentially can generate big run plays against this team. And when you throw the option element into it, it took me a long time to get here. My apologies if you don't like the longer content. I guess you're not listening at this point. But I think when you throw in the option element with all the things I've shown you, I think the Ravens do have the ability to run the ball at times against this Browns defense. Are we going to consistently get 5, 6, 7 yards? No. There's going to be a number of 2 or 3 yard gains. But with Gus and Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell, and then you throw in the Lamar element as well, I think the opportunity is there to get 2 or 3 or 4 big runs this game and really put the Browns defense on their heels in terms of what they can do defensively to avoid putting themselves in these situations that have hurt them at times in 2023. All right, another element of what we did in week 4 that I think we had some success with, and other teams have copied, but we may have copied from teams who played the Browns before us, was attacking their boundary side inside linebacker, regardless of who it was, or attacking their boundary side coverage and or throwing to the running backs. Prior to when we played them in week 4, Jaylen Warren had some substantial catches out of the backfield, and I'll show you at least one of them here. We had a huge catch in our week 4 win in Cleveland. It's the first play that I'll show you here to talk about. It's a 3rd and 6, complete to Melvin Gordon on a snag wheel, the backside of trips. Whether they're playing zone or man to the front side of trips, they're generally always in man to the backside. So when I call it trips, really it's bunch in this particular iteration. Think about the hash being right here. everybody to the top side defensively for them, and this free safety right here is playing zone. And then to the bottom side, you've got man and man. That's typical for trips or bunch formations. I mean, I taught the same thing to high school and youth football kids. But we've got man coverage and an intentional snag or pick by Aguilar, forcing the linebacker, I think it's JOK in this case, to go underneath of that route. And then Gordon is open. It's a perfectly thrown ball by Lamar. That was a big moment. I think Lamar converted 3 third downs on this drive that ends up in a touchdown. Zone to one side, man to the other. But again, a big completion to the boundary, forcing their boundary side inside linebacker to be involved in coverage. Colts week 7, same exact play. The only difference is the ball's a little bit more in between the hashes, but look at what you got. Free safety middle of the field, man alignments here and here. And so you know you've got man there on the back. This one actually is kind of cool. The wide receivers lined up wider to the top side, which somehow makes it more effective in terms of the pick or the rub against that boundary side or that weak side inside linebacker. You can see he had to go underneath again. There's going to be a very clear attempt to grab Jonathan Taylor here. Fortunately, the ball is caught. There's no flag on the play. Maybe he didn't actually grab him, but he clearly was trying to. Another example of the Colts kind of copycatting our plays, but look, we copied plays or concepts from other teams when we played them in week 4. That's the nature of the NFL. When someone has shown something that's worked, you're going to try to replicate it with your personnel and your scheme. Earlier in the season, before we played them, this is Jaylen Warren for 30 yards. Slightly different variation to this because it's going to the field. I'll let it run one time, and then I'll break it down a little bit. It's a designed route to Jaylen Warren crossing the midline, but the pre-snap motion also, I think, plays a little bit of a role. So he was originally to the downside of the screen. The offense is left, defense is right, and then he ends up over here on the right of the quarterback. Watch what they do with the bunch receivers here, one of which being a tight end. Oh, by the way, for coverage, just to confirm, that's 22, lined up directly over the tight end. No motion from a wide receiver this time, but look at the routes that they've run. Basically, you're talking about shield routes here, allowing Warren, whose feet was on this side, to cross the quarterback's face, pick the linebacker who's assigned him. That's 44, who's way behind the play. Ends up being a 30-yard gain. Again, no motion from the wide receiver, but in this case, the Browns were fortunate that play didn't go to the house. That's why you have a free safety back there at the third level. This one isn't to the running back, but this is attacking their boundary side coverage. Ball on the left hash. Bunch to the field. There's number 22 to the side of the tight end. But it's zone to the bunch side, which they show consistently, and man to the backside. Well, you may say, well, Coach, what's the boundary side linebacker and coverage got to do with this? This is to Andrews. So what we're running here is mesh. From the backside, we got the X running the shallow drag. This defender right here goes with him. Additionally, think about this boundary side defender the last time that he got beat, against us at least, he went underneath. So where's he go? He goes over the top. We're giving him eye candy. Gus going out here, so we're clearing this guy out of there. We're clearing the backside corner out of there. And if the other remaining inside linebacker doesn't go with Andrews, which he doesn't, Lamar knows right now, even before then, that he's got Andrews wide open because it's a combo coverage zone to the bunch side, man to the backside, and it's there. Lamar had to know probably a second before now that he was going to have Andrews open because he confirmed that this was man and this was man. And even if that linebacker went with him, you're going to like Andrews' chances running to the pylon or closer to the sideline. That's got to be one of the focuses, if you ask me, of our game plan. Now, it is later in the game, this particular play that I showed you. But if you watch it again, it's a clear read for Lamar. And we already knew the coverage because we had run something like this before. We had run this formation. They had played the same coverage to the field and to the boundary. I would expect to see some type of adjustment by Scwartz against our bunch formations, but the problem is we do bunch A with the running back on the side of the bunch, and bunch B with the running back away. So they've really got to have two different coverage calls. I really don't think it can be overstated how much their boundary side coverage, the backside of trips, has let them down this year. I really only showed you 4 plays, but I expect some type of adjustment from them, particularly into the boundary, as I said, because that's where Todd Monken likes to attack a lot. Another coverage that the Browns like to play a lot, or at least they did a lot in week 4 against us, let's put it that way, is cover 3. So we're talking about a zone cover, 3 deep, 4-man rush with 4 underneath coverage guys. And as I show you these plays, pay attention to where 22 is. When we talk about quarterbacks being able to determine coverages or coverage possibilities post-snap, we've got to talk about alignment of certain players. So generally, so far, I've pointed out to you number 22, Delpit, who's a really good football player, being lined up to the tight end in man free. Now the tight end, Andrews, is to the boundary. 22 is over here lined up over Ricard. So it's 21 personnel, and they've given us their base 4-3, they being the Browns, playing cover 3 out of it against pro slot A. Lamar looked away immediately once the ball was snapped. It didn't necessarily move anybody, but I like that he's coached to do so. You can see he's looking over here immediately, perhaps to confirm something, perhaps to just look people off. Andrews is running between the curl flat player and the hook to curl player right around in here. Similar catches against the Colts the week before in the home loss. I'll give you the end zone angle so you can see it. It's to the boundary. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I did give you the end zone angle. I don't. All right, so 20 personnel here. And again, you've got Ricard being treated like a tight end, but 22 is on the opposite side. So he's opposite the tight end declaration in both iterations of cover 3 that I'm showing you here. This is going to be Zay on an underneath route. This is a huge play, not just in this individual game, but this type of play. First of all, this is a route that a lot of us have talked about for over a year. Needs to be thrown. In this case, the Browns are playing a deeper second-level zone drop. So I think we're late in the second quarter here, but I could be wrong. It's bunch B, chip by Ricard to help out the left tackle, Macari. I think Duve is a little bit late getting to this deeper under route because I think he's got to be there a little earlier to potentially force this safety to come down onto that route. And then what I think the design of it is supposed to be is to allow the potential post over the top of the safety if he takes that deeper route by Duve. I think Duve's got to get into that route a little bit earlier, but he's trying to clear the second level of the defense. And by the time he gets there, and Lamar could potentially throw the ball to that deep post if the free safety came downhill sooner, which he does not. Lamar has already thrown the ball to Zay. Look at the line of scrimmage. The line of scrimmage is the 43. This ball is going to be caught on the 43. These are huge, that you can catch the ball at the line of scrimmage underneath the cover 3 and still get 7 to 8 yards. It opens up the deeper routes later. You can tell your players whatever you want to tell them defensively. If every time you play cover 3, you're being beaten underneath, eventually people shorten their drops up. You can see it. Maybe not necessarily on this play, but this gives you a good illustration of the cover 3 element, 3 deep, 4 under. I know most people listening have played Madden or college football, so you see those little lines in different colors when you play it and pick your coverage pre-snap. That route has been available to us for the better part of a year, year and a half. We've finally taken it. I have it 3 times this year, but it's a good route to be available late against cover 3 if nothing else is open. Even bigger play by Flowers, 11 personnel. And they're going to insert cover 3 here. So 22 is dropping down to the curl flat. You can see your 4 underneath, 3 deep coverage delineation, 4-man rush. We chip with Gus and Andrews, which is really effective in this case. It's 11 personnel. Lamar scrambles out of there, hits Zay for 43 yards. Let me point out one other thing. Pre-snap, you do have 22 to the side of Andrews. It's 2nd and 25, though. He's not playing man from 14 yards depth. So he's spinning down, and the other safety's spinning back to cover 3. You can see what the chip by Andrews has done here. It's decleated one defensive end. The other defensive end, Gus chipping him, helped out Falele. And Lamar has too much time with what now turns into a 3-man rush with one of the edge rushers on the ground. able to get out the front door and deliver an amazing pass to Zay that the cameraman for NFL missed. So I'll show you the end zone angle. Like I said, we chip with Gus and the tight end on the right. It's effective. The four-man rush has not always been enough to deal with Lamar Jackson, depending on the coverage. I wonder if the Browns are going to go to more 5-1 looks, five-man rushes, force him to get rid of the ball sooner and try to take away as many of his escape opportunities. But with the way we've been throwing the ball quick and the way we've been throwing the ball down the field, especially for big plays, it's a dangerous proposition, if you ask me. But that was a late second quarter play on a 2nd and 29. I misspoke and said it was 2nd and 25. Ends up being a 43-yard gain and leads to this. 17 seconds left in the half. This is a little bit of a cover 3 variation down into the red zone. It's not really cover 3. You don't play cover 3 from this part of the field. But it's an underneath zone coverage, and they're loading up the 3 receiver side. So when I say 3 receiver side, you got Zay, Andrews, and Gus all releasing to the boundary. So backside over here, you got Ricard and 15. But again, what are we talking about as far as being able to determine whether it's man or cover 3? There's 22. There's Andrews on the other side. He's on the wrong side for it to be man-free, guys. That's why I'm pointing this out to you. Now, you get the broadcast view. You probably won't be able to tell that often because I feel like the broadcast view is sometimes zoomed in, but he'll be in the box, quote-unquote, in terms of 22 to the backside. Definitely man over here. He might be playing man on Ricard, but these are all zone relationships. Eyes on the quarterback, eyes on the quarterback, eyes on the quarterback. Same thing in terms of field of vision. Zone to the trip side, man to the backside, and just an amazing throw by Lamar. We've talked about it ad nauseum, but here you go from the end zone angle just so you get a very clear view of it. 22 is on Ricard. Off screen, you have the corner on the X receiver. To our left right now is zone. Look at these guys' relationship. They're not playing man, looking at the quarterback like that. So it's clearly zone, and probably one of the best throws that I've seen someone make in that part of the field in all of 2023, putting the ball up over the top of one defender, close enough to the sideline to only allow Andrews to catch it, but give him a high percentage opportunity. Amazing play. Last cover 3 variation that I'll show you. This is against the Colts. It's going to be, I would say, a blown coverage down here to the bottom side, but Josh Downs is, first of all, Gardner Minshew sees this quickly because he could throw this to Pittman on the deeper snag. It ends up being a 56-yard touchdown run or touchdown catch to Josh Downs. So you got the offsides by Garrett, which gives him a free play. He could throw this. This is open. But Downs is going to push out to the flats, and I'm running out of frame here at the bottom for you guys to see it. And then watch what the corner covers. It's cover 3. Maybe you don't think it's cover 3, and that's no problem. But it certainly looks like it to me in terms of 4 underneath, 3 deep guys. 21 goes with Pittman. And you can see Downs has outflanked the curl flat player. Minshew's already throwing the football. Huge play. Are we going to light up their cover 3? Are we going to light up their man free? No, I'm just pointing out to you the way that they play it, where 22 is lined up. One of the things that Lamar will possibly be looking at pre-snap in terms of determining coverages, there'll probably be 5 or 6 or 7 other things, and ways that we can attack them on the backside of trips or backside of bunch coverages if we want to try to replicate what we did in week 4. The last element that I want to cover in terms of the Ravens' offensive attack, a tendency, a pattern that I've seen, and I'm sure plenty of other people have picked up on, is our usage of 20 personnel. So when I say 20 personnel, I mean a running back, a tailback, either Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, or Keaton Mitchell, along with Pat Ricard. Now, Pat Ricard's alignment might be as a tight end, but it's still 20 personnel because the personnel is declared before the offense lines up. How often we're running the football out of 20 personnel, how effective we are doing so. I've actually already showed you this play. And then where we're running the football generally when we're in 20 personnel is going to be to the side where Pat Ricard lines up, oftentimes trying to run it away from the nickel defender. This is that same play that I showed you earlier. Watch the motion pull these linebackers over. 6 and 5 move over. That allows them to be pinned inside by all these blocks here. Duve, for whatever reason, leaves Delpit alone. Gus makes a miss. It's a same side run off tackle. 20 personnel, 16 yards on the ground. This is going to be a situation where I wonder, I don't suspect, but I wonder How long are we going to continue to be this effective running out of 20 personnel? Now, we do have 3 receivers on the field. So, and Pat Ricard could stay in as a 6th potential blocker. So what I think the real smart usage of this could be is play action with Ricard staying in as a blocker and allowing the running back to slide out into the flats. Hill, Mitchell, Gus being absolved of pass pro responsibility because now we have a 6th guy who can be utilized in that chip and release technique in Pat Ricard. We've gone 20 personnel to run the football generally to the boundary. This is against the Lions, end zone angle view only, outside zone stretch to Ricard's side, into the boundary, getting Morgan Moses up on the strong safety because the Lions have their base defense on the field. Most teams are going to respond with their nickel against 3. I apologize. This is actually their nickel defense. Most teams are going to respond with their nickel defense, and these are the advantages that Monken is creating with the run game. This is one of the coolest run concepts that we ran all year, wham trap. Broke it down many times already for you, but who is it utilizing and where is the football going? We're trapping this defensive tackle with Pat Ricard. You got the down trap block by Ricard. Moses is stepping out to Will Anderson, and that's where the seam is being created. Why? Because it allows our 2 most athletic guys, Linderbaum and Stanley, to move up to linebacker level. Pin down blocks by Ricard, Zeitler, and then a back block by Simpson. Moses working out on the edge defender, 20-yard gain. That's the first time we ran it in 2023. If you're a Browns fan watching this long, expect to see that play at some point if Pat Ricard's on the field and he's to our right like you see right now. Now, this is option. We generally are doing this on 3rd down to Pat Ricard's side. This happens to be a first and 10 run play, but the conditions by which you can kind of predict it is the running back and tight end, or in this case, Ricard on the same side. Ricard will arc release to go get the safety, isolating this defensive end, basically making it to where he can't be right. Ricard arc releases, goes and gets the linebacker, because what most teams, particularly the Seahawks, want to do is they want to step the defensive end down, force a keep read by the quarterback, take the inside linebacker, scrape exchange or gap exchange him out. Well, you can see they can't get that accomplished here because we put Ricard there. If the Browns are more prepared, I wonder what the return on our 20 personnel run game is going to be. I'm not saying that the Browns are going to stop it. I'm saying, to me, it looks somewhat predictable at times, and these guys that are scouting for in the NFL and playing in the NFL certainly are way smarter than me and quicker at recognizing it. So do I think the Ravens are going to come out there and run for 180 yards against this defense? No. Do I think we can generate 5 or 6 runs of 10 yards organically, potentially with 2 or 3 more added on by Lamar in the option game? Absolutely, and we'll need them at key times. I don't like to do predictions. I do score ranges. This is an AFC North game between 2 teams that have already played. The Browns come in missing 2 of their starting tackles, apparently. Deshaun Watson hasn't been playing extremely well. So certainly it sets up for the Ravens to win and win convincingly. In my opinion, the AFC North just doesn't work like that, especially not in 2023, where it's been unpredictable in terms of result, number 1. And number 2, everyone's extremely competitive. I would look for the Browns defense to come in and play extremely well and physical and fast and not allow us to execute 8, 10, 12 play drives up and down the field. I think they're going to try to put pressure on us, and I think they're going to get multiple stops from those pressure looks. However, I think they open themselves up to the big play while doing so. And if the Ravens can block well at the second level, get the inside linebackers blocked up on run plays. Number 2, not be predictable. And number 3, if we can find a way to deal with Myles Garrett in the pass game and get Lamar some time, we know what he can do with time. I would look for the Ravens to be able to generate a double-digit lead at some point if they can avoid turnovers. As soon as you throw 1 or 2 turnovers into the situation, the dynamic totally changes, and I would not trust anyone's predictions, let alone my own. The Ravens defense comes in and plays the way it has recently, and the Ravens can avoid turnovers. They're definitely set up to be able to get up on top of this team and hopefully force the Browns offense to be one-dimensional. I don't bet on games, and I wouldn't recommend that you do either, particularly in an AFC North rematch. But I would say that the Ravens, if we can avoid turnovers, have the potential to generate big plays against this Browns defense, even if we don't have the potential to have 4, 5, 6 scoring drives of 8 or 10 plays or more, simply because of the pressure the Browns put on you and their ability to make plays, tackles for losses, passes deflected, and sacks, on their side of the football. I appreciate you guys' time. If you enjoyed the long-form content preview, then please let me know in the comment section. These two do take a considerable amount of time and effort during the week to piece together and then edit to get together for you guys. I put this one out a day early because I think Ravens fans want to see it, number one. And number two, I would like to see you guys' feedback before I get the defensive preview done, hopefully for Saturday morning. Appreciate you guys' time.